Fracking, it's a term I guess a lot of your viewers will have heard. But if you think of it in very basic terms, you've heard of the expression getting blood from a stone. This is getting gas from a stone. So it's about introducing high pressure water to break up stones in the ground to then release the gas.
Paul, what's the actual process of how you extract the shale gas?
Yeah, it's for shale gas, and also you can use it for coal bed materials as well, so you can extract gas from that as well. We mostly associate it with shale. The process is to pump water and chemicals into the ground at very, very high pressures. So essentially you create fractures, hence the term fracking.
Okay.
So in the stone, which then releases the gas, and then you extract those out the same way as you send the chemicals in to fracture the stones.
Now, advocates think it's a safe solution to our energy problems, and environmentalists, they think otherwise. They think it's extremely harmful. Is it fair to say fracking has divided the nation?
I think you do sit on one side or the other, certainly. There's a lot of evidence, particularly in the United States, where it's more established around the environmental harm that's being done. And the basics are, we don't really know enough. There's a lot of, say, information that's starting to gather about it being unsafe, but we need to understand more. And then once you start doing this, there's associations with earthquakes, contamination of groundwater, which is the water we drink, and as well as the impact going upwards. If you're fracturing stones, it's got to go somewhere, and what impact that might have on the environment and wildlife and the like as well. So it is very much a black or white issue.
I mean, you mentioned there that it's more established in the US than it is here. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's taken so long?
I think over here there's been a more cautious approach to it. There's been a lot more opposition based on the experience they've had in the States to prove that it actually works. And there's been a couple of exploration rigs done, particularly in the news. There's been things around Lancashire. I think that's really why it's taken so long. We've got a lot of regulation around that, which is good. But fundamentally, if we don't understand the chemistry of it, we don't understand the effects on the geology and the like, then we really should err on the side of caution.
So Paul, what's your stance on fracking and why?
My personal stance is that we don't need it. I understand the arguments around energy dependence and the like, and part of our foreign aid and foreign interventions that we do is around sort of energy management as much as anything else. So if we had our own sources of natural gas, then it may alleviate some of that. But we've had things like North Sea oil for a long time and gas, and that hasn't given us energy independence. And in this day and age, we have much more renewable sources of energy with the solar energy, wind, tidal, and the like. And if you've got that as a group of resources and biomass and things like that, you don't need to do it. So if you don't need to do it, keep it in the ground. We had the Paris Climate Change conference a couple of weeks ago, and you're not going to limit global warmth to 1.5 degrees if you keep burning fossil fuels.
So do you think this is why it's divided the nation?
Yeah, because it's almost a simple solution, isn't it? If we've got gas underneath us, let's fracture the ground, bring it up, and then use it. The reality is that the long-term damage is going to have a huge impact. Towards the end of the parliamentary session, they decided to push through a vote on allowing fracking underneath national parks, the Broads, and areas of outstanding natural beauty. This was right at the end of Parliament, and was done through a procedural system which seemed to just push it through very quietly and quickly, and it was really picked up the next day what the decision actually was.
So how will this decision affect the West Midlands?
Well, the principal area that's close to us is Cannock Chase, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty. It includes, beyond that, it means places like the Lake District and the Peak District, so further afield where we go for long walks and the like, so it affects areas like that as well. But the most local area to us is Cannock Chase, where it will permit them, if a company wants to be able to frack underneath the national park and the areas of outstanding national beauty.
And so before this decision, it wasn't allowed?
That's correct, yes. And indeed in Parliament in January this year, that's what they agreed. So there was a vote at that time, when it was a coalition government, that it was not allowed anywhere in national parks or areas of outstanding natural beauty, areas of scientific interest and things like that. But this change has meant that now it's sort of a U-turn on what was decided before the election.
And I understand that the Staffordshire County Council, they've actually got a 15-year, well, they're in the final stages of completing a 15-year mineral plan.
Yeah.
Tell me what that's all about.
The 15-year mineral plan is it is what it sounds like, essentially. It's a plan of what the county's policy is around mineral extraction, and that includes a section on hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons is another word for oil and gas, so it covers that in a broad context. So there's a section which gives you guidance on their approach to extraction of hydrocarbons, including the use of fracking as a technique.
Now, Paul, what are you doing to try and save areas like Cannock Chase and making sure that they're fracking free?
The principal thing is to raise awareness. So I think if people know about it, the more people know about it, the more they engage with it, the more we've got opportunity to ensure that places like Cannock Chase are not fracked for the gas underneath. And more broadly, the whole area. There's permits already issued out by the oil and gas regulator for big parts of northern Staffordshire, so all the way from Leek across to Newcastle. That doesn't mean that there's fracking going on, but there are permits being issued to allow that. What we want to do is make sure that people are aware these things are happening, and then they can make an informed decision, hold our elected officials to account, essentially.
And tell me about the petition.
Yes, we've got a petition up on 38 Degrees, which is keep your fracking hands off Cannock Chase. We put it up about 2 days ago. It's got about 1,500 signatories already. We've done this on the back of another successful campaign, which was around getting the county council not to sell their countryside estate, because we've been battling that since June to make sure they didn't sell off parts of their countryside estate, or our estate essentially. And this is another aspect of that battle now because of these changes that happened on the 16th.
And so, you know, by having so many signatures in such a short time, it shows, you know, just how much of concern fracking is.
Absolutely. It is something that people need to be aware of because it will have long-term impacts, and we want to make sure that people are aware of that. This becomes the core of the argument, really, is that the evidence that we're seeing from the United States and some elements of what we've seen in Lancashire is that there are concerns about contamination of our groundwater, which is our drinking water. So if you think we're going to push water and chemicals into rocks to fracture them, that's got to go somewhere. Now, a majority of it will go back up the pipe it came down, essentially, but if you're fracturing something, then you can't really control where it's going to go. So there are two immediate elements of concern. That's one. And the other is earthquakes. And there have been mini earthquakes that have been picked up in some of the areas that have been looked at for this in various parts of the world.
I understand there was one incident, and I believe it was perhaps in the States,
yeah,
where the water, it was actually spitting fire.
Yes, yeah. I've seen the video of something similar. And that's because the gas that saturates the water is coming out the water. So then if there's a source of ignition, then it can do that. They are rare occurrences. We're not trying to say we're going to have flaming water coming out the taps around Staffordshire and the West Midlands. But it's something we need to be aware of. We just don't know enough about it. That's the underlying concern.
I mean, Paul, there is the other side to this. You know, the government say that fracking will bring in more jobs and energy security. And
cheaper bills. That's the counter argument that that's what it is. Well, the number of jobs, there won't be a huge number, I wouldn't have thought in that sense. There'll be more jobs if you invest fully in the renewables industry. So if you put your weight behind solar energy, behind wind, we see wind turbines onshore and offshore, but we need to look at what we can do with that. Tidal power, because we know what the tides are. And if you've got that sort of broad range of renewables and put that investment into there, you don't need to do this. at all, and we can move away from being a fossil fuel economy.
Paul, it's a great suggestion and it's completely valid, but why do you think that kind of suggestion wasn't explored before the MPs voted to back fracking in international parks?
It's a very good question, and to my mind, it should be. We mentioned the Paris Climate Agreement, but that's all about pushing towards a renewable society, because we know man is having an impact on the climate. We're seeing weather events like what's going on in Cumbria, but we see much bigger things happening around the world that's going on. So that's a very valid question, and it's not really being answered. We should be doing these things.
So is there a lack of evidence, or a lack of evidence?
What, in terms of using renewables?
Yes.
I think part of that, if you think about renewables, renewables can be used to produce electricity. Cars, for example, run on oil, or diesel or petrol. So you've got to evolve society away from that. Now, we have technology which is making electric cars these days and the like. You can look at trains running on electric lines rather than diesel and things like that. So it needs to be a shift in how we want to do things, which will take time, but we need to make a commitment to it. And we haven't made that commitment politically.
And Paul, very quickly, we talk about cheaper bills. How much cheaper are we talking?
It's minuscule across that. I think they will be cheaper if you are putting solar energy panels on households across the region, where you're getting that directly from the sun into your house to heat the house. That's got to be cheaper. And that's how the feed-in tariff worked, is that free electricity went into your home and the rest went into the grid.